Mortal Kombat X marks the 10th installment in the franchise, and the series' first game to release on next-gen consoles. The series, which had fallen on hard times, recently managed to reinvigorate itself in 2011 with a reboot of the series simply titled Mortal Kombat. But does the sequel put up a good enough fight to keep the series relevant? Mortal Kombat is a fast-paced fighting game set in an incredibly gruesome world, where combat is the only way to survive. Every punch yields blood, and every death is brutal. Mortal Kombat X follows the blueprint of the last game almost entirely, whilst adding a few new ideas that build upon the last game's mechanics. The controls are simple, with short intuitive combos and easy to pull off special attacks. It controls very similar to the Street Fighter franchise, but it's not quite as technical. As you fight, your character will build up their special meter, which has 3 levels of charge. The first segment allows a more powerful version of a special attack. The second level allows the player to perform a combo breaker and break free from a barrage of attacks. Finally, a fully powered meter allows you to execute an X-ray attack, a powerful attack that can deal massive amounts of damage to your opponent in the form of a gruesomely detailed combination of attacks. A new addition that's been lifted from the studio's last game, Injustice, is the ability to interact with certain areas and items placed on the stage, by jumping off over a wall to flip over your adversaries, or by throwing an object to deal some quick, easy extra damage. These elements can be turned off for serious players who prefer a more pure fighting experience. Using these contextual moves drains a portion of your fighter's stamina bar that stops players from abusing these tactics. Another ability that drains the fighter's stamina is dashing, which can be used to aggressively close the gap between you and your opponent. The series' staple fatalities make a return, and they're as gruesome as ever, featuring some horrifically inventive ways of mutilating your opponents. Alongside this is the new brutality feature, which allows some new ways to quickly and brutally end your enemies by fulfilling certain conditions and dealing the final blow with a specific attack. The game sports a 24 character roster, 25 including the downloadable character Goro, which is included as a bonus for those who pre-ordered the game, or available separately for downloads for those who didn't. Every fighter includes 3 different fighting styles, which vary the character's appearance, movesets, and characteristics. This means that the character can experiment to find what moveset fits their playstyle without learning a completely new character and moveset. There are also a number of different unlockable outfits for each character, which the player can unlock by completing certain actions. Of the 25 characters, 17 are returning characters that have been playable at one point throughout the series. There are 8 brand new characters that have never been before playable. The new fighters do a good job of diversifying the roster and breathing new life into a franchise that was plagued by an overabundance of palette-swapped ninjas and robot ninjas. One of the main features that helped the 2011 reboot of Mortal Kombat stand out was the introduction of a story mode, which helped to give the characters and setting of the game motivation and context, whilst also providing a more in-depth experience for less competitive players. The story mode in Mortal Kombat X will last you around 4 to 6 hours depending on how experienced you are. The mode is definitely worthwhile as it does a good job offering extra value to players who aren't into the competitive online fighting scene. It does a good job of introducing you to the different characters and helps you feel more connected with the world in which these masochistic fights take place. In each chapter you take control of a different character for a number of fights, which forces you to learn how to use some of the characters. It's worth noting that the story mode in Mortal Kombat X only features 12 chapters, where in the previous game it featured 16. It feels odd not playing as the majority of the characters available in the roster. The story mode included in MKX follows directly on from the previous game. The story mode this time round features some more impressive details in the cinematic sequences between fights, greatly showcasing a greater interactions between the characters' environments. Throughout the story mode there are a handful of quick-time events that take place during cutscenes, in which the player is prompted to press corresponding buttons to control the on-screen character during these sequences. These sequences are good for keeping the player engaged, however they don't change anything outside these cutscenes, and are entirely optional as there's no penalty for incorrectly pressing a button and there's no way to fail the sequence. Despite this, they do a good job of keeping the player invested, having them interact with the cutscenes rather than passively watching. However fun the story mode is, it isn't going to win any awards for its narrative content though, as the dialogue is content to stay within the realm of cheesy action movies. However, that isn't to say this isn't to be expected from a game featuring interdimensional ninjas and sorcerers. The story does not feel quite as strong as the previous entry, as it really lacks a main villain for most of the story. He only appears briefly at the beginning and again at the end, without much build-up. As the story lacks the presence of a main villain, the plot bounces around between a number of different characters with no real strong goal throughout. Despite this, the story mode is still a great addition to the game, and it's leaps and bounds in front of what most fighting games offer. As you would expect from a fighting game nowadays, Mortal Kombat X features an extensive online mode, offering up a multitude of different modes. Standard versus mode, team battle, and King of the Hill all return from the previous game. When first booting up the game, you'll be prompted to join one of the 5 factions. Doing so will allow you to gain XP for your chosen faction by simply playing the game. Periodically, all of your faction's XP will be evaluated against the other groups, and whichever faction has the most will win rewards for every member of that faction. The tower modes in the game have you climbing a ladder of increasingly difficult opponents in order to reach the top. In Living Towers mode, players are given 3 different challenge towers, which change hourly, daily, and weekly. These towers have you fighting up a ladder of increasingly hard opponents, some with a random modifier in effect, such as health being thrown onto the stage. There's also the new Challenge Tower mode that tasks players with completing randomly generated towers and challenging friends to try beat their time. For offline players, there are traditional towers which feature the classic modes from previous games. There's the Classic Tower, which is the arcade mode. Test Your Luck is a tower that randomly selects different modifiers. Test Your Might is a mode where you have to mash buttons in order to smash through different objects. Endless Tower, which challenges you to see how many foes you can take down without losing. And Survivor, which does the same but doesn't refill your health after each fight. Also, the Crypt mode returns and is more fleshed out than ever, allowing you to move around in first person, exploring graveyards and dark caverns, in order to unlock new hidden items such as fatalities, costumes, and more. What's really surprising about this mode is the amount it has to offer. You can find items that belong to different characters from the game, such as Scorpion's Chain or Sub-Zero's Ice Ball, allowing you to unlock secret areas. Also, whilst you're exploring, you have to remain alert as you'll be randomly attacked by different creatures hiding behind every corner. Overall, Mortal Kombat X is a worthy successor to the last entry, as it builds upon the gameplay, making some worthwhile mechanical additions and introduces some interesting new characters. The one real complaint we have with this game is the way it handles DLC, as the game immediately has one character available day 1 for download. This was used to promote pre-orders and buying the game new, which is understandable, but it's the fact that even before the game has released, they've advertised the Season Pass, which boasts 5 new characters for the game. So that's 6 downloadable characters total. Also, it feels like a bit of a tease playing against characters that have been previously available in past games, but aren't in this game, even though you can see they have a pretty extensive moves list when you fight against them. We're hoping that they're going to be made available at a later date, and hopefully not for a fee. Despite this though, Mortal Kombat X is an extremely fun game, featuring a solid roster of interesting and unique characters. The story mode is great for casual fighters, and the online is varied and extremely solid. In our time spent with the online, we only encountered lag once, and it was only for a second before correcting itself. If you're a fan of fighting games, a fan of the series, or just someone who really loves gore, check out Mortal Kombat X. Newcomers can get warmed up with the story, whilst veterans can dive right into the multiplayer. Thanks for watching, we're Res Magazine, there's some links on screen to some other videos that you can check out right now, and we'll see you next time.